Welcome to Portland, Oregon. It's a Sunday afternoon in May, and we've just arrived in the City of Roses on the Amtrak Coast Starlight. Since we only had one afternoon in the city, we rushed to our hostel. Time to hop on the Max Light Rail. We're at the southbound platform here at Union Station, which is served by the green and orange lines. Made it to our hostel in Portland. Let me give you a quick tour. We stayed in this beautiful private room in the Northwest Portland hostel. The complex had a cozy little courtyard, and it was connected to an amazing coffee place. Breakfast here was included. After browsing through the world's largest independent bookstore and eating perhaps the best chicken sandwich we've ever had, it was time for a little more sightseeing. Portland's unofficial city motto is "Keep Portland Weird." And yeah, after spending the day wandering around the city's thrift stores, bookstores, and coffee shops, it's safe to say some people take this motto pretty seriously. Not to be outdone, however, Portland's transit system has some weirdness of its own. Take the commuter rail, for example. It's just one singular line that doesn't come anywhere near the downtown area, using these weird single-car diesel trains. Going back downtown, there's the bus rapid transit system known as the Frequent Express. I don't know, I just think that's kind of a corny name for a bus. Some more weirdness. There's two separate street running systems. There's Max Light Rail, dating back to the 1980s, and a streetcar system that opened in the early 2000s. If you were just a tourist walking around downtown, you might not notice the difference. Both systems run down the middle of the street here. At some spots, they even share tracks, but they really are two separate systems. If you want to know more, I have a whole video from about a year and a half ago explaining this and going into more detail. But there's one thing that I find weirder than everything else, and I'll tell you all about it soon, right after this little streetcar ride. We're heading down to the aerial tram. The Portland aerial tram was the #1 thing I wanted to do while we were in the city. Last time I was here, I wasn't able to due to pandemic-related restrictions. Alright, so we've taken the north-south line to South Moody and Gibbs, which is right in front of the Portland aerial tram. Sadly, today we were equally unlucky. The cable car had closed for the evening. Nearby is the Tilikum Crossing, an exclusive bridge dedicated to light rail, streetcars, buses, cyclists, and pedestrians. Probably the best bridge in the country. We're taking Max Light Rail back downtown now. The train crossing the bridge over there is an Orange Line train. The lead train is a Type 1, the oldest model in the fleet. Those won't be around much longer. We arrive at Southwest 6th and College Station. This is the last stop on the Orange Line, but it doesn't seem like it. We just keep on going, now as a Yellow Line train. Let's take a look at the map. The orange and yellow lines take the Portland Transit Mall, with northbound trains running on 6th Avenue and southbound trains traveling down 5th. A better map might look like this. As you can see, the orange and yellow line are the same line. The vast majority of trains originate in Southeast Park and continue all the way to Expo Center. You might be asking, what's so weird about this? In some places, trains change lines regularly. In Tokyo, Japan, for example, many suburban trains continue onto one of the subway lines once they reach the city. This gives commuters a one-seat ride to many places downtown. In Europe, there are many international trains that change names once they cross a border. For example, the train between Prague and Munich is treated as a long-distance fast train within the Czech Republic, but as a regional train once it crosses the border into Germany. See, these transitions make sense. In the Japanese example, the train moves from the tracks of one company to another. In Europe, they literally change to a different country with a different language. But here in Portland, there's no huge difference. We're still in the same city, the train is still run by the same agency. There really is nothing about the Orange Line that's different from the Yellow Line. So the million-dollar question here is why? Looks like it's time for a quick history lesson. When MAX first opened in the 1980s, the original line crossed downtown Portland in an east-west direction. Today, this is the line used by red and blue services. At the same time, they were planning a north-south line, or I should say a south-north line, because that's what it was called. This was going to travel all the way from Vancouver, Washington, down to Oregon City. Especially the people in North Portland really wanted this. People in other areas, not so much. Vancouver, Washington wiggled themselves out of the plan early. Anti-light rail activists in other areas repeatedly forced votes, and the citizens voted against the train by small margins. But the people in North Portland didn't give up. They successfully lobbied to bring MAX to their community, and in 2004, the Yellow Line opened. Trains ran down the same east-west corridor through downtown as the red and blue lines. In 2009, Yellow Line service was rerouted to the Portland Transit Mall, a north-south transit corridor that had previously been reserved for buses. A month later, the new Green Line followed. By now, Tram had successfully relaunched its initiative to construct light rail southeast into Milwaukee. Anti-Maxers tried to stop it again by demanding that every piece of light rail funding be voted on by the public. This time, however, a judge blocked them, allowing construction to proceed. In 2015, the extension was opened. The Tilikum Crossing I showed you earlier was part of this extension. Service was labeled the Orange Line, even though it operated as an extension of the Yellow Line. The official reason for this, according to TriMet, is because they anticipated that there would be higher frequencies on this section. Sometimes they might want to turn trains around downtown, and it would be clearer to have separate colors on the map. Now, I'm all for clarity, but I don't really buy this. Not many Orange Line trains actually turn around downtown, and if they did, is it so hard to say Yellow Line terminates at Union Station? I find the explanation that it was a political move more convincing. TriMet themselves have said that the Orange Line deserves its own recognition. It's just a smart marketing trick, presenting it as a brand new line rather than just an extension. And it makes sense. There were many residents who were vocally opposed to light rail. I won't speculate too much as to why. Anti-transit sentiment is widespread. Urbanist YouTubers often talk about NIMBYs, an acronym short for Not in My Backyard. The areas served by the Orange Line are somewhat wealthier and wider than the areas served by the Yellow Line. Anti-transit sentiment coming from suburban areas is a real issue across the country, and there are often serious racial undertones to it, even if not everyone is aware of them. Rail is seen as a way for those people to come into our neighborhood. In a few conversations I've had with locals, some of them have blamed the animosity towards the MAX extension on these sentiments. I want to acknowledge this, but also stress that I myself am not a local. I've read a lot of archived news reports from around this time for my research. They mostly cite financial concerns, but of course, local news can only report on what people say and not what's in their souls. The truth is probably somewhere in the middle, as it usually is. What I do know is that marketing is everything. TriMet had to sell their new line to a resistant group of people. Did it work? I don't know. Ridership on the Orange Line is by far the lowest in the system. But it does make for an interesting YouTube video. Sadly, our time in the City of Roses was short. Bright and early the next morning, we'll be hopping on the Amtrak Cascades up to Seattle. Subscribe to Trains Are Awesome so you don't miss the review. Thanks for watching today. We'll see you next time.